What if the night that almost killed her was the same night that tied her fate to a man she barely knew? The mist in the Wyoming valley moved like a slow river, floating low over the new green meadows and clinging to the dark pines. Caleb Stone stepped out onto the porch of his cabin with a hot mug of coffee warming his hands. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. It was honest air, the kind he trusted, the kind that reminded him he was still alive, even on the days when he did not feel it. Stone Creek Ranch was small, worn, and lonely, but it was his. A cabin he built with his own hands. A barn that leaned a little to the north, fences always needing mending. But the land was good, and the creek ran steady. This place held the last pieces of his wife, Mary, and he guarded it the way a man guards the last thing he cannot lose. But the world wanted to take it anyway. Silas Dugan was the name of that world. He owned the biggest cattle operation in 3 counties and the only saloon in Red Hollow. A greedy man who saw Caleb's land as a shortcut to more money. He had tried to buy it. He had tried to scare Caleb into giving it up. Nothing worked. Caleb did not bend. That morning, the sky was a clean blue, but by afternoon, it turned into the color of a deep bruise. The wind changed. The clouds rolled in bold and heavy. Caleb knew trouble when he saw it. By dusk, the storm hit with a force that shook the walls of his cabin. Rain slammed down in roaring sheets. Thunder rolled through the valley. The small creek beside his land swelled into a raging monster, its waters pushing against the rough wooden bridge he had built years ago. The lightning cracked so close he felt it in his teeth. He tried to sleep, but the storm was a wild thing. And then, in the middle of that roaring darkness, he heard it. A crash. A scream. Human. Desperate. He was on his feet before the echo died. He yanked on his boots and slicker, grabbed his lantern, and ran straight into the storm. The wind almost tore the light from his hand, but he pushed through the mud, the rain, the roaring creek. The bridge was broken. A supply wagon lay smashed against the collapsed timbers. One wheel gone, the horse tangled in the harness, the creek swallowing anything it could reach. Then he saw it. A flash of blue. A scarf caught on a broken plank. He lunged toward it, boots sliding on the slick rocks. The cold water slammed into his legs like a wall, threatening to pull him under. He fought it. He grabbed the scarf, and the scarf was wrapped around a small, shaking body. A woman. Her head broke the surface, a pale face, dark hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes wide with terror. She coughed, choking on water, too weak to scream again. He knew her. Lily Hart, the quiet girl from the dressmaker's shop, the orphan with soft eyes who always kept her head down, as if trying to disappear from the world. He wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her free from the wreck. The creek fought him the whole way, tugging at his legs, trying to drag them both into the black water. But he held her tight, her small body pressed against his chest. He felt her heart flutter fast and uneven, a fragile beat fighting to stay alive. "Hold on to me," he shouted, his voice raw. She tried. Her cold fingers clutched at him, but she was slipping, too weak to fight the water. He kept his arm locked around her, step by step, breath by breath, until he reached the bank and pulled her onto the muddy ground. She shook uncontrollably. Her lips were turning blue. Her thin dress clung to her skin, soaked through. She was freezing, dying if he did not get her warm fast. He did not have a choice. He lifted her into his arms and carried her across the yard. The lantern light flickered across her pale face as her head fell against his chest. She whispered one broken word into his neck. "Thank you." Inside the cabin, he set her near the fire. Her clothes dripped onto the floor. Her skin was ice cold. He grabbed a thick wool blanket and one of his shirts. "You need to get out of those wet things," he said. "You will catch your death." He placed the clothes near her and turned away, giving her his back. "I'll be outside," he said. "Call when you're done." But he did not go to the barn. He stood on the porch, letting the rain hit him as he tried to steady himself. Bringing an unmarried woman into his cabin for the night went against every rule he lived by. The town would tear her apart with their gossip. Red Hollow was not kind to a woman's reputation. He listened for her voice. When she called softly that she was ready, he went back in. She sat near the fire, wrapped in the blanket, his shirt hanging loose on her small frame. Her wet dress lay over the chair to dry. Her long hair dripped over her shoulders. She looked at him with wide, scared eyes. A quiet trust lived in them. He handed her a warm mug of coffee. Their fingers brushed. The touch was small, but something in him jolted awake. "The road's washed out," he said. "You'll stay here tonight. You take the bed. I'll sleep by the stove." She nodded, staring into her cup. Silence settled between them, but it was not the cold silence of strangers. It was a tender, fragile quiet. A new, unsteady bridge forming between two lonely souls. Hours later, as the fire crackled low, she whispered a trembling question. "What if I have nowhere to go back to?" Caleb looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him. Something dangerous. Something alive. Could a lie written in ink destroy the fragile safety she had finally found? Morning broke quiet and soft. Lily woke in Caleb's bed, wrapped in warmth, sunlight touching her face. For a moment she forgot the storm, the flood, the terror. Then she remembered everything and sat up fast, clutching the blanket to her chest. Caleb's cabin smelled of wood smoke and brewing coffee. She stepped out and saw his bedroll on the floor by the cold stove. He had kept his word. He had protected her honor the same way he had saved her life. Outside, he was already working in the corral, fixing a loose post. He moved with steady purpose, like a man who had been up for hours. She watched him through the window, unsure how to thank him for everything he had done. She tried anyway. She made breakfast. By the time he came inside, the table was set with biscuits and salt pork. He paused in the doorway, surprised. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to," she answered softly. They ate in a quiet that was no longer painful. It was almost peaceful. Lily found herself glancing at him, wondering what sort of life he lived here alone. Wondering why this place felt safer than anywhere she had ever been. But peace does not last long on the frontier. Around mid-morning, a rider came into the yard. Jedediah, the mail carrier, climbed off his horse and handed Caleb a small stack of letters. Caleb flipped through them until his hand froze around a thick envelope with fancy handwriting. He opened it. The color drained from his face. "What is this?" he said, holding the paper out to Lily. Her heart dropped. The document inside was written in formal script. Heavy parchment. Clear black ink. Contract of matrimony. Between Caleb Stone and Lily Hart. Her breath caught in her throat. She read it again. And again. But the words did not change. "I never," she whispered. "I never signed anything like this. I would never. Caleb, this is not mine." He stared at the paper with a quiet fury. "This is Dugan's paper," he said. "His ink." "And the signature, it isn't mine, but it's close enough to fool folks." Her knees nearly gave out. The forged contract, the directions to his ranch, the timing of her wagon accident. It all snapped together. Silas Dugan had tried to trap Caleb into scandal, and Lily into shame. "No," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't stay here. The town will think I planned this. They'll think I'm trying to take your land." "Where will you go?" Caleb asked. "Back to Red Hollow." "To the boarding house. I'll explain." He shook his head. "They won't believe you." She knew he was right. Mrs. Pike would gossip. The Reverend would judge. And Dugan would circle her like a wolf. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. Instead, she looked at the ground and whispered the truth. "I don't know where else to go." Caleb looked at her for a long moment. His eyes softened in a way she had not seen before. He took a slow breath, as if making a decision he did not want to make but knew he must. "You'll stay," he said. Her head snapped up. "As my housekeeper," he added quickly. "Not my bride. Not my guest. You'll work for me, I'll pay you fair. Folks will believe that. It was protection wrapped in practicality. It gave her shelter without scandal. It gave him time to find out who forged the contract. Time for what? She asked. Time to find truth, he said. Time to make someone answer for what they've done. Something warm flickered inside her. Hope. Safety. A new strength she had never known. I accept, she said. He nodded once. Then call me Caleb, he said, since you're working with me. And you must call me Lily, she answered. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. From something else. Something she did not dare name. Days passed. The valley settled into a quiet rhythm. Lily rose with the sun. She cooked, cleaned, planted a small garden patch behind the cabin. She mended Caleb's torn shirts with careful stitches. Each small act made the cabin feel less like a stranger's home and more like a place that held her in return. Caleb worked the land, checked fences, tended the herd. He was a silent man, but Lily saw the change in him. She saw how his shoulders eased when he came into a warm kitchen. She saw how his eyes softened when he noticed she had added fresh water to the flowers on the windowsill. They were careful. Always careful. They kept a polite space between them. But the quiet between them shifted. It grew warm. It grew full. One morning, Caleb caught her watching his horse, Dust Devil, with gentle curiosity. You should learn to ride, he said. I would only be a bother. It isn't a bother. A woman alone should know how to get away fast if she needs to. His voice was practical. His eyes were not. The lessons began the next day. He stood close behind her, his hands guiding hers on the reins. The warmth of him, the strength of him, made her heart beat too fast. Sometimes their fingers touched. Sometimes she forgot to breathe. But the frontier does not let feelings grow in peace. One night, the wolves came. Their howls echoed through the dark, chilling the blood. A new mother cow was calving in the north pasture. Caleb grabbed his rifle. I'm staying in the barn tonight. Quote, I'm coming, Lily said without hesitation. He looked at her, ready to argue, but her steady eyes made him nod. Inside the barn, they lit a lantern. The shadows swayed on the walls. The animals shifted nervously. Outside, the wolves circled, hungry and patient. To fill the fear-filled silence, Lily spoke softly of her past, of the orphanage, the saloon work, the hands that reached for her without permission. Caleb listened. And then, in a low voice, he spoke of Mary, his wife lost to fever, the silence that followed her death, the loneliness that had become his only companion. In the dark warmth of the barn, they shared secrets that had lived too long in their hearts. A fragile trust grew roots. When dawn finally broke and the wolves faded away, they walked back to the cabin in silence, not distant, not strangers, connected. Days later, trouble came again. Dugan's men rode into the yard. Their sneers carried the same threat as before. Things get expensive for a man alone, one said. Taxes, trouble. Sheriff might want a word if you don't start being reasonable. Quote, they laughed and spat in the dirt near Caleb's boots before riding off. Lily's hands trembled. They're trying to scare you, she said. It'll take more than that, Caleb answered, though his jaw was tight. But fear was not the only thing stirring. One afternoon, while moving supplies into the root cellar, their hands touched. Just one brush of skin on skin. But the jolt of it made Lily drop the grain sack and step back, breath catching in her throat. Caleb froze too, his face suddenly flushed. They stood apart, neither daring to look at the other. The small cellar filled with a heat that had nothing to do with the summer sun. The distance between them had vanished, and neither of them knew how to put it back. What if the truth that could save them was also the truth that could take everything away? Spring turned harsh again. A sudden blizzard swept across the Wyoming Valley like a living thing. The storm came without warning. Snow fell heavy and fast, and the wind howled against the cabin walls. Caleb burst through the door, covered in white. A heifer's calving early, he said. She's in trouble. I need to get her into the barn. I'm coming, Lily said, already pulling on her coat. He almost told her no, but one look at her determined face stopped him. They went out into the blinding storm together. The cow was down in the drift, crying in pain. Snow whipped across the pasture, stinging their faces. Caleb pushed from behind. Lily coaxed the cow forward, whispering to her through the roar. By the time they got the heifer into the barn, both were soaked with melted snow, shaking from cold and exhaustion. The barn was freezing. The wind forced itself through cracks in the wood. Caleb worked fast, sleeves pushed up, hands steady as he helped the struggling cow. Lily knelt beside him, bringing warm water, rubbing the cow's neck to soothe her. After a long, brutal effort, the calf was born, small and weak but alive. Relief washed over them, but the cold was sinking into Lily's bones. She was trembling uncontrollably now, her teeth chattering. Her soaked dress clung to her skin like ice. Caleb saw the danger instantly. He had lost Mary to a fever after a winter chill. He would not lose Lily. "You're freezing," he said, voice rough. "You need to get dry." He looked around the barn. No privacy, no walls, only shadow and lantern light. His code, the iron rule he'd lived by all his life, clashed hard with the simple truth. If she stayed in those wet clothes, she could die. She saw the conflict in his eyes, saw the fear, saw the helplessness he tried to hide, and she trusted him, fully, completely. Her voice shook when she spoke. "Undress me, cowboy." Everything inside him froze. The wind, the storm, the beating of his own heart. She held herself still, cheeks red, breath uneven. "So I can put on something dry," she whispered. "I trust you." Those words broke something inside him, but they also built something new. He turned his back at once, his shoulders broad and solid like a wall made only for her protection. Without looking, he held out a dry horse blanket. He listened, heart racing, to the soft rustle of her wet dress as she peeled it from her cold body. He kept his eyes fixed on the far wall, jaw clenched, every muscle drawn tight. When she pulled the blanket around herself, she whispered, "You can turn around now." He turned. She sat wrapped from shoulder to feet in the thick wool blanket, only her face visible, pale but safe. He hung her wet clothes near the small brazier to dry. Then he laid his own heavy coat over her, adding warmth. He sat a distance away, cleaning his rifle with shaking hands. But the storm outside was not the real storm anymore. Something tender and wordless had formed between them. For 2 days they were snowed in, 2 days of warmth, of shared chores, of soft smiles. The silence in the cabin was no longer empty, it was full. But when the roads cleared, they had to go to town, and Red Hollow was ready. People stared, whispered, judged. Mrs. Pike avoided Lily. The dressmaker's clerk glared. Duggan stood on the saloon steps with a smug smile. "It's a shame," he said loudly, "when a lonely man makes promises he doesn't plan to keep." Caleb's hands tightened on the reins. Lily felt the words like a slap. They left town in heavy silence. That night, Caleb made a choice. "I'm going to find the truth," he said quietly. "All of it." He found it. Jacob, the clerk at Dugan's store, was scared but decent. He showed Caleb a carbon copy he had hidden, a duplicate of the fake marriage contract, the proof. At the bottom was a forged witness signature, Deputy Sheriff Wade. This wasn't gossip anymore, it was conspiracy. But before they could breathe, a courier arrived with a summons. Lily was ordered to appear in a public hearing, to clarify the legal standing of the marriage contract. Dugan wanted her shamed, wanted Caleb ruined, wanted the land. That night, Lily felt herself crumble. "Maybe I should leave," she whispered. "Maybe I should run." Caleb's heart broke at the words. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I'll give you money. You can start over somewhere new." It hurt more than any storm ever had. "So you want me gone?" she whispered. "No," he said at once, voice cracking. "I want you safe." She looked at him with new, growing strength. "If I run, he wins." "I won't run again. I am going to the hearing. I'm telling the truth." Caleb felt something fierce rise inside him. Pride, respect, love he wasn't ready to name. "We'll face it together," he said. The next morning they rode into Red Hollow. The entire town was gathered as Judge Blackwood sat at a simple table in the square. Dugan's lawyer spoke first, spinning lies with smooth words. Deputy Wade backed him with a shaky but believable story. Lily's stomach twisted. Then Caleb stood, calm and steady as stone. "I have witnesses," he said. He called Elena Vega. She trembled but told the truth. She had typed the contract under pressure. Gasps spread through the crowd. Then Mrs. Pike came forward, pale and weeping. "It was me," she cried. "I started it. I only meant to protect Lily from Dugan. He twisted my foolishness into something evil." The truth cracked open like thunder. Dugan's smile vanished. His men panicked. One drew a pistol and fired. Straight at Mildred. Caleb moved faster than thought, shielding Lily and Mildred with his own body. The bullet grazed his arm. In the chaos, townsmen tackled the gunman. Wade tried to flee, but dropped a pouch of Dugan's gold. Judge Blackwood slammed his gavel. "Silas Dugan, you are under arrest." The crowd erupted in anger and relief. Justice had come at last. Lily turned to Caleb, tears streaming. "You saved me again," she whispered. He held her close, their foreheads touching. "No," he said softly, "we saved each other." The world was quiet when they returned home. Clean, fresh. The storm had passed for good. Lily tended his wound. He watched her with a look that said everything he had never spoken. She told him she wasn't leaving, not unless he asked her to. She wanted Stone Creek. She wanted him. He cupped her face gently. "You belong here," he said. That night he led her outside under the wide Wyoming sky. Stars glittered like 1,000 lanterns. "I have nothing fancy," he said. "Just hard work and a stubborn heart. But it's yours if you'll have it." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll have it." He kissed her. A slow, tender kiss that promised a lifetime. In the autumn, under aspens turned gold, they married by the creek. The whole town came. Elena stood as witness. Mrs. Pike wept grateful tears. Lily tied her blue scarf to the fence post at the pasture's edge. A reminder of the night pain turned to fate. That evening they stood on the porch of their cabin, now their home. The windows glowed gold. The land stretched quiet and safe. Storms would come again, but they would face them together, forever.